the day-to-day mechanisms that make these institutions tick. So I see we're on the top of the hour at 4 o'clock. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Strauss Company. This is the third installment of our museum moment. And today we're very proud to host the Norval Foundation. We've got some multimedia that I'm going to kick off for you. And then we are going to turn over to Elana Brundyn, the Chief Executive Director of the Norval Foundation, who's joined by Owen Martin, the Chief Curator. The Adjunct Curator of Performance, Khanyisile Mbongwa, is also going to be joined by Karel Nel, who is our Senior Advising, the Norval Foundation Senior Advising Curator in residence. So let me just quickly, before I start the social media, I just want to make sure that, Karel, are you with us? Hi, Karel.
I'm here.
Oh, fantastic. Super. There you are. I just wanted to see you pop up on the screen and make sure that you can hear. Fantastic. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining Strauss Co. And without further ado, I'm just going to give us some a video to contextualize the space and the environment. So and I believe commemorate on the occasion of the second anniversary of the institution.
When I have no sound,
Here's a Zoom, G, with Norval.
So, John, I'm just going to ask. I'm just going to ask the audience if we can stop muting our microphones. And at this point, I believe we're going to have Molly sharing our screen. I'm just going to allow that quickly. And I'd like to take this opportunity to say to Elana and to introduce the Chief Executive Director of the Norval Foundation, Elana Brundyn. And Elana, there was a comment made earlier that it feels like 10 years of exhibitions and performances and concerts, not just two. I think on the celebration of your second anniversary, the foundation has seemed to achieve so much already and has become automatically part of the cultural landscape, indeed, not only of Cape Town but of the art of a continent. Over to you.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you so much. Yes, we're very, very proud of what we've done in these past 2 years. And I want to thank you, and I want to especially thank Bina for allowing us to, or giving us this opportunity on the beautiful museum moments that you've created, and for Strauss Co for being interested in what we do. You know, as a Norval Foundation, we are one of the new kids on the block. And it's interesting, and it's also wonderful for us to talk to you about what we do, who we are, how we came about. And you know, it's nice to see also that we have our team here today. I wish I could bring the whole team with me, because it's always a whole team effort. But it's wonderful to have Owen and Karel and Khanyisile being here with me today. You know, when I look at that video clip that you just watched with us, it reminds me that above all, the art world is still very much about people, about the wonderful artists, about the who create this beautiful work. It's about the curators who animate and curate the collections, and it's about the patrons who support us in the work that we do. And that's for us at Norval Foundation very, very important. And our mission has from day one been threefold. We wanted to make art available and accessible to our community. We wanted to enrich our community with the public program and education program that we bring with that. And we hope that we can contribute to establishing Cape Town further as a global cultural city. And, you know, the Norval Foundation is a beautiful gift to South Africa. And honestly, we don't often get gifts like this. It's a gift from a private family, the Norval family. And I mean, we're very, very honored to have this in Cape Town, and that they were prepared to do this. So I think when I was preparing for the talk today, I thought a lot of the people ask me, you know, where was the seeds sown? Where did it all start? And so I have to go back to the early 1990s, when Louis Norval was a young property developer in Pretoria. He was the property developer of shopping malls, and he was at an auction, which is relevant to Strauss Co, and he bought two paintings, one of which was Maggie Loubser's Woman with a Yellow Scarf, that is still today in our collection, in the Homestead collection. And it was a defining moment for him, because it marked the beginning of a sustained dedication to the visual arts in South Africa. Many years later, Louis went again to the Stefan Wels & Co auction, which was in 2007, of a very prominent South African collection that was auctioned. It was a businessman from Cape Town, Jack Khan, and his wife Helen. And it was, you know, with all the very prominent names of Stern, Loubser, Boonzaaier, and so many more. As they had no direct descendants, the proceeds of the auction went to charity. And this really intrigued Louis. And what is beautiful is he realized that art collection, the unit, the collection of those years of collecting, he felt had more intrinsic value for society than the individual artworks on its own. I think this was a formative moment for him. And when he became a global investor in 2011, he also really started to notice that there was very little governmental support and very little funding for the visual arts in South Africa. Also, really that philanthropists support or financially support the museums, the artists, or commissioning new work, or supporting curated exhibitions. And I think Louis decided that it was his social responsibility to establish this world-class sustaining art platform where he could enrich the lives of many by using art as this tool, and where his collection could also then be, you know, almost available for the public to see instead of being in vaults hidden away. So hence the Norval Foundation was born, a cultural center dedicated to the research, exhibition, and the education of 20th and 21st century visual arts, and mostly focused on Africa. We opened our doors to the general public in April 2018, which feels like 100 years ago, but it's only 2 years ago. We are a destination museum. We're about 20 minutes from the center of Cape Town. And we are located in a very, very beautiful area, a wine-growing area of Steenberg, next to the Table Mountain National Park. So en route, lots of people tell me, always en route to Boulders Beach, which is the very, very famous penguin beach. So I never knew that the penguins are so popular. The museum is designed as a modern pavilion for art. It is designed by a local architect firm, DHK Architects. It's led by Derek Henstra. It's a green rated building, and it's sensitively constructed to offer protection to the beautiful wetland, like an ecosystem wetland. And in our wetland, we also have really VIP guests. We have the endangered leopard toad living and mating in our garden, and we decided to embrace them because they we even named one of our characters, which is in our education characters, like a narrator of our education program, Vincent, which is the little leopard toad. I think the sculpture garden is really one of the biggest contributions that we bring to the art ecosystem, because the galleries and the public spaces are face this exquisitely beautiful landscaped indigenous sculpture garden. I don't know of anywhere else where we have that in South Africa. And it's this beautiful play, this beautiful balance between the conservation of art and the conservation of nature. So even if people don't necessarily react on art, they love coming to us and just wandering through the gardens. The sculpture garden features 21 three-dimensional artworks, mostly from the continent, and Owen will go into it a little bit more later. And the placement of the artwork is also very, very important for us. We use the contours of the garden, and it's beautiful while you're walking through the park. They reveal and they hide, and so it's really worth a visit. You know, adding to the experience of the art, we have a beautiful outdoor amphitheater. We in the summer we do concerts. We have a concert program, and our Christmas carols are actually very, very popular in summer. We even our playground, where we believe we try to be a very family-friendly visit where children can play. We have the beautiful Holders to Boulder by artist Angus Taylor, that was specially designed and made. And Angus made this for children to interact with. Then we have the popular Scotland's restaurant and bar, which is led by our executive chef, Phil de Villiers, which is open for breakfast, lunch, and we have it open for events. A lot of the time people come and do events there, and some dinner nights we also open. Then we have exquisite research library, bespoke shop, which is for us, also a lot of fun, because we do not only Norval Foundation branded products, but we also try and collaborate with artists on special products when we do the exhibition. So it's unique artist collaborations in products. And then we have, of course, our beautiful our 9 galleries. Our gallery 8 is already very, very known because it's a very key contribution also to the art world. It's one of the biggest galleries in Africa. It was built for monumental sculpture and monumental installations, and Owen will go also into that a little bit later. We also even have a little hidden secret. We have a beautiful apartment in the foundation, which one could rent and come and stay a night at the museum. I always remember that movie where you could go and stay and spend a night at the museum and organize behind the scenes tours, which is really all adding to the visit. So each element of the building has been commissioned to the highest possible specifications and on par with leading museums around the world. The building is purpose-built. The entire construction, the design of all the systems and functions is for the preservation and for the display of these beautiful treasures. And on the screen, you see an image of our storage facility, which is one of the best I think, in Africa. And that is 2 floors below ground, where we not only we're honored to host the Eduardo Villa estate collection, the Alexis Praller archive, and we also have, of course, the Homestead collection, which is the Norval family collection, which is, you know, for us, this stewardship of the collections and archives is really also a very, very core function of what we do. And more and more, we're also noticing that some of our patrons are considering to donate art to us, or to even include us in their wills, because they know that we will properly look after, we have the facilities to look after these national treasures. So honestly, we are very proud. In 2 years, we've really accomplished, I'm very proud of what we've done. You know, 16 exhibitions, world-class exhibitions, is really testament to what Owen and his team has been doing. I mean, people around the world are noticing what we're doing, and we have published 7 quality publications, which is very directly linked to our exhibition program and also our education program. And we even, with the help of our patrons, have done a little children's book, which we're also very proud of, little Vincent that comes and visits the Norval Foundation. We've held 27 concerts in our concert program, and more than 240,000 visitors to a destination museum with no public transport, which is actually remarkable. And I really feel people are hungry and want to see more. So, but the statistic that I'm most proud about is the more than 5,000 children that we've led through, and many of them from underprivileged backgrounds. We've led on private museum tours with Lindsay that you actually see there on our screen right now. We know that museums are no longer just merely platforms for culture, but they are really vital educational institutions, and they have a profound effect on society. So not only are we growing the next generation of art lovers, but we want to contribute to their education. And in a way, we looked at what we could do, because already a lot of our partners in Cape Town do amazing work, like Nalela and the Butterfly Art Projects. They all have very beautiful programs that they run. So we saw that there's very, very few that focuses on the theory of art history for children. And we thought that's maybe where we can contribute. So we are building a curriculum for children from 6 to 16 with a view from Africa out to the world. And we're building this curriculum to share. We want to share it not only in a physical format. You see the beautiful designed worksheets that we create, that the team creates for every exhibition, but we also want to share it digitally. So we are working on that to make, you know, also in games and in making sure that there's coloring books and story books all on the artists from Africa. And we all know that the golden key to equip the youth is education. And so we hope that we can contribute not only by having them come through and see the beautiful work, but also in the critical skills that are needed for the 21st century, by using art history as an alternative teaching tool. We know that art fuels minds and it fuels hearts to keep growing and developing. And moreover, more so in these difficult and divisive times, art has the potential to transcend language, class, gender, religion, to heal and to unify. And as Martin Price wrote, it even transcends time. So art history and art practices is for us very, very important and hold lessons for everybody and for society. And as a foundation, we really want to focus more on our education. And I think, you know, with the brilliant exhibitions that our team puts together, it's such a no-brainer to see how children love visiting. And even if you don't love art, you love visiting the Norval Foundation. So I will hand over to Karel and Owen and Kanye to discuss our artistic program.
Perfect. Thank you, Elana. So first, I'll take you through the larger sort of strategy of the Norval Foundation's artistic program, and then myself and Karel Nel and Khanyisile and Mbongwa will walk you through some of the exhibitions that have taken place at the foundation over the last 2 years. So the Norval Foundation's artistic program fits really hand in glove with the educational programming that Elana has just discussed. And it realizes our mission of making art available to the public. I think that is really at the heart of what we do. That idea of engaging the public and providing sort of educational resources. And we do this, we fulfill this mission by undertaking exhibitions, commissions, screenings, live art engagements, talks, walkabouts, and other sort of creative projects on a regular rotating basis. Our position in Cape Town and in South Africa definitely informs the subject of our programming, with the majority of our programming. So, our majority of our program is really dedicated to artists from South Africa and increasingly across the continent of Africa and its diaspora. And we believe that this is one of the foundation's key contributions to the cultural life, not only of our city, of our country, but of the broader continent and the visual arts in the broadest sense. Simultaneously, the South African public has, over the previous 2 years, been able to engage with some of the most sort of interesting practices globally of international artists. And one of the things that is significant for us as well as we build this program is to really create a balance between artistic practices that visitors might be aware of, might be familiar with, but also provide an opportunity, a sort of opportunity to discover emerging and mid-career artists that are perhaps lesser known. So it's this play between the well-known and the more emerging, as well as work from both the 20th and the 21st century, from the modern and the contemporary. We've done a series of solo exhibitions, and these solo exhibitions have been undertaken quite consciously because we feel that they offer us an opportunity to honor key artists who may not have had a retrospective in their lifetime. So artists such as Sidney Khumalo and Ezra Mlahai, two artists that Karel will discuss just now, as well as the upcoming exhibition of a belated tribute curated by Portia Malachi and Ntobeko Ntebela. And so these exhibitions really do give us an opportunity to look back and consider the contributions of these key artists. And then our ongoing Atrium Commission. If any of you visited the foundation over the first sort of year of its existence, you'll have walked in the front door and seen this work which sort of bars your entrance into the galleries. It's a work by Sarah Jalan Ntegeka, and Karel will discuss it just now. It was completed for our opening in 2018. And that forms one of our atrium commissions. We will have another commission coming up soon, hopefully in September when we get a chance to reopen. And my colleague Khanyisile will be discussing that now. And so these atrium commissions sit alongside our more traditional exhibitions. And they're really an opportunity and are meant to be a catalyst for artists to realize perhaps one of their more ambitious or perhaps their most ambitious work to date, and really also respond to the Norval Foundation's architecture, so that particular architecture, that particular space. Embedded within this artistic program and then running really alongside it is certainly an emphasis on research. So as we put together each exhibition, we undertake research to understand an artist's career or a group or a set of dynamics, a set of ideas. And this research is for us a significant contribution. But we also facilitate research by other scholars. So we recently had a scholar working with the Alexis Preller archive that we have on site. And so that is also, we feel, an important contribution to the sort of cultural life of the city and the country, and perhaps beyond that. As Elana also just mentioned, we've published 7 publications up to now, or up to this moment. And this includes 6 catalogs. So these catalogs are not only a sort of record of an exhibition, but they expand beyond an exhibition. So most recently, we worked on a catalog, which was a partnership with Koenig Books in Germany. And this partnership involved us creating a sort of a catalog which expanded beyond what we could undertake in Williams' exhibition, which looked at his sculptural practice. So we included a sort of index of William Kentridge's sculptural practice in that catalog. And so now that I've given you sort of an idea of what our intention and our sort of framework is for this program, I wanted to touch on quickly the Homestead Collection, and then I'll pass on to Karel and then to Khanya. So like the artistic program, the Homestead Collection draws upon its local context for its identity. It is the Norval family's private collection, and it's based at the foundation, and it was assembled by the family, including Louis Norval, over about the past 2 decades. It comprises about 1,600 objects, a little bit more than that actually, and is a leading collection of 20th century art from South Africa, with in-depth holdings of artists such as Alexis Preller, Cyprian Chulako, Ernest Menkoba, Gladys Mshanglu, Irma Stern, Nuria Mabasa, Maggie Laubscher, Peter Clark, and Demili Fenny. But increasingly, this focus on a local form of modernism or modernisms is expanding to include voices from across the continent and from our present moment. So we've begun including works or the work of artists such as Singer Sampson, Zanele Mahole, David Goldblatt, Eddie Ilunga, Elias Sime, Igshaan Adams, Sherry Samba, and Georgina Gratrix, just to really mention a few and give you a sense of how this collection is really expanding at this moment. I think what's significant about the Homestead Collection, which really separates it from other collections, is that the Norval family have acquired whole bodies of work by specific artists. So Goldblatt series, David Goldblatt series on the Mines, which Karel will discuss just now, was acquired as a whole body. And Zanele Mahole's ongoing series of self-portraits, Somnyama Nyomnyama, has been acquired as a body. So 56 photographs from that series has been acquired. This is in addition, of course, to the archives and estates that Elana has just mentioned, of, for example, Alexis Preller and Eduardo Villa. And then certainly, last but certainly not least, is the Revisions collection. And this sits within the larger Homestead collection. It's a collection that was assembled by Bruce Campbell Smith, and it's allowed this, the Homestead collection to really have an expanded narrative of South African art, moving beyond sort of canonical artworks and artists. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Karel, and Karel's going to speak a little bit about our opening exhibitions. Do we have Karel? Perhaps he's just unmuting his hi, Karel. Would you like to tell us a little bit about the rediscovery of memory and Serge's installation?
Yes, thank you, Owen. It's very good to be with you all this afternoon. Rediscovery and Memory, our opening exhibition 2 years ago, focused on the relationship between Sidney Khumalo and Ezra Machai and Eduardo Villa in the 1960s. During this time of apartheid, the racist attitudes that prevailed were challenged in some ways through the communication that grew between Khumalo, Machai, and Villa. The exhibition addressed the huge omission that neither Khumalo or Machai had had a retrospective in their lifetimes or been honored by one after their deaths in 1988 and 1999, respectively. Both had emerged from Polly Street, taught by Cecil Scottness and promoted by Egon Gunther, to become significant full-time sculptors of national importance. Image. Shown alongside these were works by Eduardo Villa from 1958 to 68, including his monumental Africa, publicly shown again for the first time since the 1960s, here in the context of his complex, dark, spiky, linear steel works at the time. This 7-ton sculpture seems to have been the first monumental welded steel work to have been produced on the continent of Africa. Slide. Serge Alain Netegeka, a remarkable young sculptor, a Burundian refugee, was commissioned to install a major piece which filled the Norval atrium. This was made possible by the Clay and Eduardo Villa Trust, which encourages the production of new work by younger or established South African sculptors. It was curatorially, strategically placed alongside that of the work of the 1960 Villa pieces. Its juxtaposition allowing viewers to look both backwards and forwards to see how the world changes, but also how there are visual languages which continue. Netegeka's work evokes a bodily response, obstacle, physical and psychological, that confront the displaced, migrant in Africa, but also as a worldwide phenomenon of our time. Focused research led to a major catalogue being undertaken on these 4 sculptures. And have we lost the slide of Helen Sabidi? Okay, there we go. So Mahaba Sabidi's significant exhibition, curated by Portia Malaiche, focused on Sabidi's paintings that over a lifetime have challenged her migrations from a traditional rural context, the harsh realities of urban township living, and her observations of shifting perceptions and the fracturing of the psyche. How traditional values are negatively impacted by the violence of urbanization and the deep effects of colonial history on the sense of self. Her deep-held affirmation to the bond between animals and humans and the ancestral world abounds in her work. Her resolute conviction and groundedness in an African sensibility and belief system was in dramatic contrast to the ironic, disruptive Mbongwa exhibition, with its complex contestation with Afrikanerdom, with its church and authority, which was an exhibition which was curated by Owen. So we're going to have to jump back to Mbongwa for you. There we go.
Perfect. Thank you, Karel. So before I bring up and discuss this the exhibition of Mbongwa, Heliostat, I wanted just to touch on this dialogue, because there's what we've attempted to construct between the exhibitions. There's not just a narrative, I think, within a given exhibition, but there's a narrative which emerges between exhibitions, certainly in the case of Wim Botha and Machabo Sebidi, and then later between Ibrahim Mahama and David Goldblatt. And this dialogue between two artists' work, which might not have a sort of obvious link, is something that we're engaging with sort of on a regular basis and informs our decision making. So Wim Botha's retrospective Heliostat brought together key works of Botha's career spanning 2 decades, and also catalyzed, or was the reason for a new installation in Norval Foundation's Gallery 8, the gallery which Elana was just speaking about now, and which you see on the left-hand side there. The exhibition was organized around the idea of refraction. Refraction, as understood in optics, is the transformation of light, the increasing and decreasing of its wavelengths as it passes through a material such as a glass or prism. So this principle was used by Botha both literally by applying diachroic filters to the 2 glass surfaces throughout the exhibition. So that's the bright red and purples and blues. That's a diachroic filter, which is actually breaking apart or transforming the wavelengths of the light. But it was but it was also a metaphor for how he transforms canonical artworks and symbols of his Afrikaans identity. A keen pupil of the history of European art, Botha has wrestled with the legacy of seminal art objects from European antiquity, the Italian Renaissance, and the Baroque throughout his career. And he's really searching for the relevance of these symbols within a contemporary South African context. And in the process, as Karel just mentioned now, I think deconstructing or splintering those symbols in many ways. And so from here, I'd like to, Molly, if you could switch to pulling at threads. So the work with Nick Cave, the sound suit. Perfect, thank you. And so I'm going to take a step back and just, I wanted to highlight, both Karel and I wanted to highlight the dialogue between Sebidi and Wim. But I'm going to take a step back and discuss briefly an exhibition, Pulling at Threads, which was one of our opening exhibitions and accompanied the work of Eduardo Villa, Ezra Mlahai, and Sydney Khumalo. So alongside these exhibitions, Pulling at Threads brought together a group of contemporary artists working both locally and internationally, but connected by a shared interest in techniques such as weaving, sewing, beading, and collage. You can see that here in for example, the work of Nick Cave, the sound suit on the right-hand side. In the background, you can see Maria Nepomuceno's sort of quite beautifully constructed objects, both on the wall and on the floor, and a hint of Igshaan Adams peeking out behind the wall, and then William Kentridge on the left there. So these techniques represent both process and subject, where the form of making fundamentally informs the meaning of each object, and this emphasis on non-traditional materials, at least within a visual arts context, also challenges hierarchies that have historically preferred painting and sculpture over craft-based media. Through labor-intensive processes, innovative use of materials, exploration of form and hybrid cultural reference, these artworks suggest new approaches to objects in the 21st century. And then Molly, if you could switch to the collector's focus now. So alongside these sort of these major solo exhibitions or group thematic exhibitions, we've been running a program called The Collector's Focus. And it's a series of exhibitions and talks that highlight the role of collectors of visual art in shaping culture. It was established by Elana, so Elana came up and conceptualized it, and it recognizes the unique contributions that collectors play in the preservation and the evolution of culture. Norval Foundation has worked with a broad range of local and national collections owned by private individuals, collectives of private individuals, and corporations. And we did this to consider the impact of these collections on knowledge and research, and as a form of research in the arts. Both internal and external curators have been invited to work with the collection. And I think what's significant about this program and what we've tried to do is connect large-scale collections that might not be publicly accessible, or rather, I should say that unlike some large-scale collections which are publicly accessible, we really wanted to provide a point of access for the public to engage with collections which might be in storage, it might be in someone's private house, or in a corporate office. And we're really proud to have worked with the Homestead Collection. So this was the first exhibition in this series. And then subsequently with Veronique Sussman, Sunlum, Sharon, the Sharon Art Collection, and Hussein Mohammed. And curators such as Portia Malachi, Mike Mavura, and Daniel Rottenbach have all curated these exhibitions. So with that, I'm going to pass over to Adjunct Curator Khanyisile, and Khanyisile will take us through Historical Glitch. Let's sure.
Sorry, I thought I clicked on sound there. I'm sorry. Thank you, Owen. So Historical Glitch is framed as an ongoing curatorial project that explores the complex relationship between amnesia and remembrance through performative interventions. So it examines remembrance not as the spectacularized politics of memorialization of the past and its imbrication in the deep and often unnamed politics of collective memory, but as an emancipatory practice, remembering as an act of counter-memory. And then it examines amnesia as a lack of memory, gap in memory, selective overlooking or ignoring of events, or acts that are not favorable or useful to one's position or purpose. So within the context of South Africa's violent history of colonialism and apartheid, between 2018 and 2019, Historical Glitch Volume 1 and Volume 2 brought together queer musicians, poets, and Vogue artists who use their bodies, language, and touch to explore the complexity, the complex relationship between amnesia and remembrance in creating these emancipatory practices. So for Volume 1, we had 3 iterations in 2018. The first one was The Indigenous, which was a performative conversation between the Queen of Uhati, Umamuma Dosini, and music lecturer at Stellenbosch University, Uncebakazi Nukwana, about African musical instruments as knowledge production and distribution systems. The second iteration was a collective of poets, which included the likes of Linda Kaoma and Feya Kabali Kwaga, who were invited to perform The Poets Are Coming, which was a synchronized loop of 6 poets that flowed fluidly through the Foundation's gallery spaces, reciting their poems over and over for an hour without a break. It was a poetic intersection, a bleeding in and out of the individual and the collective voice. And the third iteration was Doing It in Vogue, which was an intervention that paid homage to Vogue as a protest culture of queer, Black, and brown people. Artists Queasy, Parasite Hilton, Daniel, and Chester staged what they called a flirtatious critique of the Rainbow Nation from a queer perspective. And then in 2019, we had Volume 2, which was an iteration where for 3 days long, interventions by artists were staged for 3 days. These were curated as layered experiences for the viewer, whilst challenging the artists to immerse themselves in their practice and in the performance and intervention realm for a number of days, thus pushing the body and the realm of reality. So for the first one, we invited artist Bongani Njalo, who presented Abafana Abafani, which is his continuous work, which he's been looking at since, I think, 2017, which the works originated in the Eastern Cape. His body acknowledges and celebrates the diversity of Xhosa masculinity, sexual expressions, as well as the influence colonialism has had on local fashion. The work closely examined his own relationship with himself and how masculinity is expressed in public and private spaces. And then we had artist and healer Vuyiqubeka, who presented Ezimbekweni Zakwamchana, a work that explored South Africa's trauma or South African trauma and the continent through the fairy tale of Rapunzel. Rapunzel being a girl kept in captive in a tall tower, whose heritage of royalty was kept from her, and whose long lock of hair with magical and healing powers were denied from her. So as Vui Kobeka sort of advocates that Rapunzel's story is our story, and she attempts to remind us of the gifts of the land, and her offering was a chanting, an incarnation, a mourning, a moment of silence, a prayer, and a ritual calling for healing. And so through these performative installations, our guests were immersed in what young performative artists in South Africa have to offer, and sort of a body of performative practices are starting to form in South Africa. Thank you, and now I pass on to Karel to speak about David Goldblatt's exhibition.
Thank you, Khanyisile. David Goldblatt on the Mines was a very focused exhibition, the first time that this body of work had ever been exhibited in its entirety. I worked on the exhibition before I worked with Goldblatt until the days before he died. This was to be the last exhibition that he was to be personally involved in. Big retrospectives had been undertaken by the Pompidou Centre in Paris and also in Sydney, which in contrast to our exhibition were densely hung, one work above another, making them quite overwhelming. The Nobel laureate writer Nadine Gordimer had originally collaborated with Goldblatt on his first book of photographs, On the Mines. They had been close friends over a lifetime. Her powerful and haunting text threw light on the mining context and played a reciprocal part in the reading of the images. To honor this, I asked Brenda, Goldblatt's daughter, to read the text, which played mutedly from speakers in the ceiling, creating the sonic backdrop to the exhibition. Image, please. Goldblatt's sharp eye and brilliance as a social observer are evident in his images, which engage the human cost of a national economy, the impact of colonialism and its legacy, the effects of race, and hauntingly, what it is to be human. This image of lashing shovels that accumulatively moved tons of rock, each handle gripped by the life of an unknown miner, linked curatorially to the contrasting accompanying exhibition, Labour of Many by Ibrahim Hammer, curated by Owen Martin. Maybe, Owen, you can elaborate the connection between the two from here.
Absolutely. So, Labour of Many, as I sort of mentioned earlier, and thanks for bringing that up, Karel, there is this dialogue between exhibitions, and sometimes that dialogue is less obvious, and other times it's more prominent. But I think in this case, we were delighted to invite Ghanaian artist Ibrahim Mahama to undertake a major installation in Norval Foundation's Gallery 8, and that opened February of last year. And really, it's both exhibitions dealt with different representations of labor. What you see here is a series of Hessian sacks which have been stitched together and which covered the entire gallery. And Mahama, so it covered the entire gallery. And it's really his rigorous, socially engaged and process-based practice which brought to the fore Africa's role in the global exchange of commodities while considering the movement of its people and how labor is valued. For this work, Ibrahim obviously intervened in the foundation's largest gallery, covering the surfaces with these Hessian sacks, and the monumentality of the installation was very much in contrast to the humility of the materials. These Hessian sacks bore traces of the previous owner, narrating a story about the exchange of goods and the exchange of labor, and is also connected to both local and global histories. The locations and names of the collaborators that Mahama worked with appear on the surfaces of these sacks, celebrating the contributors that were formed a significant part of a role in the creation of this work. And so Molly, if you don't mind flipping to Yinka now, I'd like to also touch on not just the dialogue between exhibitions, but also something which has run through multiple exhibitions that we've worked on, and that's really the social and political dimensions of textile practices. So we go from Muhammad, we just saw now, to Yinka Shonibare and this Dutch wax fabric that he uses. So simultaneous to Muhammad's installation, Portia Malachi and I curated an exhibition entitled Trade Winds, which took as a starting point the appreciation for this Dutch wax fabric, really thinking about its historical meaning, its conceptual meaning. And it was, so this exhibition was displayed at Norval Foundation. It was upstairs in Gallery 9, and it was formed of a series of sculptures, photographs, and a major installation. So on the right-hand side, you can see a sculpture called Boy Balancing Knowledge, and then behind that is the African Library. So this major installation, the African Library, which I had the opportunity to hear Yinka speak about yesterday evening over a different Zoom, served really to contextualize an acquisition that the Homestead Collection made also last year, called Wind Sculptor SG3. On the left is Wind Sculptor. And this has been permanently installed in our sculpture garden. And these exhibition and the installation of this work were coincided. So with that, I'd like to move over to Lisa Rihanna and her work In Pursuit of Venus, which was displayed in last year and accompanied actually another exhibition of William Kentridge, his Why Should I Hesitate sculpture. So like Yinka's work and Yinka's exhibition, which dealt with this fabric which comes out of a long history of cultural exchange and engagement. Lisa Rihanna, her Maori artist, Lisa Rihanna, created this work, In Pursuit of Venus, over a 10-year period, which was completed in 2017. It integrates a hand-painted landscape with live-action figures and a densely layered soundtrack. And it really invites viewers to observe a series of restaged historical events, which are both real and imagined. And these events all relate to the first contact between British and Pacific peoples. Rather than replicating a European perspective, which dominates the majority of accounts of this moment, Rihanna integrates Maori forms of knowledge and social practices into how the work is actually the very structure of the work. And this offers, in a sense, quite a sophisticated sort of counter-narrative. Simultaneously, In Pursuit of Venus Infected draws upon traditions of popular culture and theater, including the moving panorama, a type of rotating panoramic history painting that was popular in the 1800s, and pantomime, a form of musical comedy. And I'd just like to mention that this work is technologically a sort of remarkable feat, because it was actually shot in 15K resolution, the technology of which doesn't actually exist to project. So the artist, Lisa, was thinking about how she could create a work which has a sort of longevity or futurity, how it can be displayed in the future. And from there, I'd like to quickly touch on Michael Armitage's exhibition. So Molly, if you could just move over to Michael's exhibition. Perfect. So following the exhibitions of, Lisa Rihanna's exhibition, we undertook and opened an exhibition, Accomplice, of Kenyan artist Michael Armitage, earlier this year. In fact, it was only open for about 3 or 4 weeks before I had to close due to the pandemic. And that the works came from across the world, and it was really an honor and a privilege for us to show these works at the foundation. following a solo exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art and borrowing works from the Guggenheim, the Tate, and many others. The work on your left, you can see, which is entitled The Dumb Oracle, has actually now been included in the Homestead collection. So these 8 paintings, and you're of course seeing just 3 here, but these 8 paintings and a series of preparatory ink drawings were created over a 2-year period beginning in 2017. And they were actually presented for the very first time as a complete cycle at Norval Foundation. And they were catalyzed, or they came out of a series of events connected to the 2017 Kenyan general elections. At the time of the elections, Armitage had traveled to Uhuru Park, which is in central Nairobi. Michael is based in Nairobi, at least in part, and he grew up there. And while Michael was in Uhuru Park, he observed a major rally that was being staged by the country's main opposition party. And the observations he made of this rally, in addition to images called from social media, from broadcast media, images which he saw on the television, they form the basis of these works you see here. And these perceptions were really filtered through his very particular vision, his sort of almost oniric vision. And they open up to multiple narrative and conceptual possibilities. Because we're limited in time, I'm just going to mention that Michael paints on what's called labugo cloth. And labugo is made from the matumba, labugo is made from the bark of, it's a form of bark cloth, traditionally created by the Baganda people of southern Uganda. And the fissures and irregularities of this remarkable cloth come through in the painting and provide and create a sort of social and cultural and historical meaning that is unlike a sort of traditional painting that is created on a Western linen or canvas. So with that, I'm going to pass over to Karel to just briefly take us through William Kentridge's exhibition, Why Should I Hesitate Sculpture?
Thank you. Molly, thank you. William Kentridge's exhibition, Why Should I Hesitate Sculpture, is still in situ behind closed doors at the Norval Foundation. Here we see Kentridge with his megaphone, and he is largely known for his animations, choreographed operas, drawings, and prints. This is the first exhibition of his work which focuses exclusively on the output of sculpture. It includes various bodies of work which testify to the long-standing and spontaneous improvisation with three-dimensional form. It is as if the animations and props from his operas stepped off screen or from the stage into the gallery to engage and confront viewers. Image, Molly. A record number of visitors to the exhibition at the Norval Foundation were delighted by the cheeky, animated drum kit or the haunting songs issuing from the syncopated megaphones of the singer-sewing machines. Image, Molly. Monumental constructed steelworks, such as World on its hind legs, or the ginormous bronzes of coffee pots, cameras, smaller jugs, telephones, and cats, created a theatrical context in which viewers could enter their own rebus to create new associations. This has been a remarkable opportunity to view the work of an artist who sees no bounds. Khanyisile.
Thank you, Karel.
Do you want me to talk about, I can talk about Jackson, or do you want to go ahead?
Fine.
Okay, I'll jump into Jackson, it's on the screen. So as curators at the Norval Foundation, we have a particular interest in sculpture. So after curating the Khumalo and the Tokai retrospectives, the two major black sculptors of the 1960s and 70s, the obvious successor of the 1980s seemed to be Jackson Hlongwane. Hlongwane, who'd worked in relative isolation at Mbongwa up near Thohoyandou, had constructed and populated a remote acropolis site with 2 altars. On the site, which was central to his teachings as a spiritual leader and sculptor, he installed works redolent with biblical associations, coaxed and carved of indigenous woods from his surroundings. These woods he used to create schools of fish, the archangels Gabriel and Michael, Christ and God, all became part of his world and his daily life. Cape Townians have never had the opportunity to see a consolidated exhibition of this visionary artist. So we've undertaken to reunite the 2 altars and associated works in the next exhibition cycle. We look forward to reintroducing his sculpture to those who know him, but to the next generation of viewers. In contrast to Hlongwane in the past, the vibrant present is engaged in Athi-Patra's self-reflexive installation in the atrium, curated by Khanyisile Mbongwa. Khanyisile, could you perhaps share the personal narrative engaged by Pataruga in the making of this work?
Thank you, Carl. So the new atrium commission that opens later this year is Inyanga Zonyaka, Notes of the Lunar Songbook, a solo exhibition by Athi-Patra, who is an award-winning interdisciplinary artist whose work has adopted the trope of myth as a contemporary response to the post-apartheid era. Khuga constructs alternative identities and avatars, creating an interesting space of self-reflexivity in which he parodies and critiques the existing political, cultural, social system and status quo. Through his practice, Khuga attempts to process the fraught history of colonial past, to critique the present and propose a possible humanist vision for the future. So in Inyanga Zonyaka, Khuga will create an immersive installation where he uses stained glass as a medium to explore Southern African cosmology. His glasswork centralizes Xhosa cosmology as a way of positioning Black, queer, and femme lived experiences within the modernized, albeit displaced world, thus subverting the traditional theological representation of the medium itself. The work forms part of Khuga's continual excavation of marginalized realities, lost and exiled to history. It is the summoning of a cosmic restoration for communities that have had their stories omitted and misrepresented. So what Khuga offers us here is a way of counting time that reconnects change and movement with nature's orbit. He presents an ancient alternative to tracking time, shaking the homogeneous culture and narrative linearity implied by the Gregorian calendar. Eyesilimela is where Khuga's tale begins. His story world, the Lunar Songbook, is narrated through his avatar, Unomalizo, the one that brings reward. Raised by her mother and Umakazi Endema in Tsomo, a town just above the Kai River, Nomalizo is a genius who idolizes and is inspired by Noni Jabavu, the first Black South African woman to publish an autobiography. Nomalizo travels to Azania City to study. Later, she works at the Brink Publishing House. However, even in her newfound success, she falls into a deep loneliness and feels a need to reconnect back home. Nomalizo uses Inyanga Zonyaka as a connecting thread to a world she was extricated from at the age of 13. In what appears to be a turning point, she meets and befriends Nestra. The two women bond over motherhood and forge an intimacy towards one another that develops into them falling in love. Nomalizo later discovers that Nestra is, in fact, Memnis brings new wife. This all unfolds during Eyesilimela, Eyekhala, Eyontuba, Eyetupa. In Eyomsinsi, both mothers lose their sons in war, and together they plot to bring down the cause of their pain. They identify Memnis Brink as the cause of their pain, as he is the grandmaster of information in Azania City and has influenced these kids to go to a border war. This happens during Inyanga Yomga, a time where home fires burned the brightest. So like Nomalizo's journey, Inyanga Zonyaka is set up almost as a pilgrimage, a quest to use the symbol of nature in search of something that is lost, so as to restore a sense of wholeness and dignity. Through this stained glass constellation, Huga enters an empowered space with the spiritual self, the denied self, and the displaced self, a juncture in history and politics, social relations, and cultural perspective. The stained glass impression will be beaming and refracting in the atrium of the Norval Foundation is like a summoning ritual. The atrium will be conscientized over the period of this exhibition to become a sacred space for summoning cosmic restoration and providing a home. It becomes an enhanced and enchanted space for a reconnection and a realignment with nature and celestial imagination. So I look forward to us to experience this sacredness which Huga evokes through his upcoming exhibition, while he maintains the secret embedded in Xhosa cosmology of the dwelling stars. Over to you, Owen.
Thank you, Khanyisile. So over the last year, the Homestead Collection has made a major acquisition of 53 Zinele Mahole photographs from their Nomyama series. So in addition to our belief in the power of Mahole's practice and the importance of being a platform for this work, this acquisition has been a catalyst for an exhibition which will engage multiple themes cutting across this series, as well as Faces and Phases and Brave Beauties. And this will run alongside Ruga's dynamic commission, Atrium Commission, which I have to say I'm quite excited about, and of course with Jackson's exhibition, Jackson Kungwane's exhibition as well. And then in February, we're planning an exhibition of painter Georgina Gratrix. Molly, if you could go back to the Georgina works. And this exhibition is informed by this extraordinary period of lockdown. While not being a literal reaction to it, the exhibition nevertheless grows out of this experience of suspension, a sort of internal journey that forms the conceptual background of the exhibition. Curator Lisa van der Voort, working closely with the artist, aims to foreground these moments of pensive reflection and analysis in a practice perhaps better known for satirical portraits rooted in external observations. So it's really this aspect of this contrast that Lisa's trying to bring about in collaboration with, of course, with Georgina. And the exhibition will be roughly divided into 3 different components, looking at the portraiture, the still lifes, and a sort of personal archive of the artist. So with that, I'd like to just thank you all for joining and listening through this presentation, and then just hand it off to Elana to close.
Thank you, Owen, and thank you. It's always so exciting when we listen and we see the images, and we always say we get very excited when you see the art. So to leave you with a final thought, Louis Norval, his partner Marilee Foster, and the Norval family have truly lifted cultural philanthropy to a next level on this continent. Not only by creating this beautiful world-class platform for us, or focusing on purposeful collecting, or welcoming the general public, but by understanding that support an evolving program in education that will have an impact far beyond today. But running a foundation like this comes at a huge cost, and we cannot leave that to one family to carry. Especially being so proud, we can't make this happen without the support of so many other patrons, our members. Every single membership that sells at our front desk or online really, really helps the foundation, helps these artists, helps the program, the art club, the art and knowledge patron circles, each one that contributes. I can't thank you enough for that. With your help, we will continue to do this world-class exhibitions here right in Cape Town, and we will focus more and more on education and make our mark. And all that remains for me to say then is thank you again, Strauss Co, for giving us this wonderful opportunity to to tell all of you who've joined us and for your time today. So thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I think we might have a speaker on the line. Frank, is that you?
I haven't spoken, I haven't said anything, Matthew, but I will say something if you want me to.
There you are, ladies and gentlemen. I think Frank needs no introduction. Thanks for joining us, Frank, this afternoon.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, I just wanted to wrap up by saying thank you, obviously, to you and the guys for putting all of this together. And a special thanks to Elana and Owen and Karel and Khanyisile for sharing the unbelievable journey that the Norval Foundation have had in its first 2 years of being in existence. It's, as you said in the beginning, it almost feels like it should be 10 years. And it was wonderful to take a step back and relive those incredible collections that they've managed to put together and present to the public. So thank you so much for that. Thank you for sharing all those insights. We look forward to seeing the Athi-Patra in real life and the other exhibitions that's coming up. It sounds very exciting, and we would love to also play our part in making it real and bringing it to the public. So thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully it will be all back to reality and the real world like we like to have it, with where we can firsthand observe these works and touch them and talk about them and talk to other people about and engage them. But until then, this is a good start. So thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for everyone for supporting this series of talks of ours. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you very much, Frank. That was a surprise visit, ladies and gentlemen, from our chairperson, Frank Kilborn. I think joining us from the north.
Strauss Johannesburg offices, yes.
Lovely to have you here. Thank you so much, Frank. And just in closing, thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon. And one observation that I thought I wanted to make to the curators, because these are such wonderful discussions, and I want to thank you all for your contributions. It really does seem like it should be 10 years. The quality of exhibitions have been astounding. And that's the sort of closing point or closing thought I wanted to mention, was that each one of the exhibitions and each one of the presentations that you've managed to put onto the public has had a kind of monumental feel to it. It's really, I suppose, engaged the architecture of the environment, and in so doing brought out a kind of ability in the artists to make and present monumental work so eloquently. What do you, is there a feeling about the kind of platform that goes into these curatorial decisions?
Maybe I can answer. So in the early years of designing the foundation, we decided that we would really like to be able to show major sculpture, as there are very few museums that are able to do that. The big Eduardo Villa sculpture, which you saw being installed, weighs over 7 tons, and previously had tried to show it at the Johannesburg Art Gallery, and it couldn't enter the building. And if we showed it at the Wits Art Museum, it would have gone through the floor. So the Gallery 8, has a floor which can take 8 tons per square meter, and has the capacity of 2 tons per hook in the ceiling. So, it enables artists to really challenge their own creative process. And we've seen with William Kentridge's exhibition how he really rose to the occasion to make the great bronzes to be shown for the first time in the space. So it is a challenge to the artists, and in a sense to the nation, to look at grand work, powerful work that has not been able to be produced in the kind of context that we have had up to now.
I mean, that was also fascinating, because precisely in the upcoming exhibitions, like with the Athi-Patra work, the fact of an artist being given the platform to do. I understand there's some stained glass. I don't want to speak ahead of time, but it's environmental work of the nature of Surgeon Tangeka, which almost ran contrary to the logic of the building, but allowed this incredible installation to take place, like South Africans haven't really seen before in museum context. And so the precisely, Karel, your point of saying that the sheer foundation of the building seems geared to showing these monumental kind of presentation.
Yes.
Matthew, I think it's also the artists who are willing to take a bit of a challenge and to, providing a platform, and they really, like Serge, now Athi, and many others that we worked with, they've stepped up and they've created a work. Khanya, I'm not sure if you want to mention anything as well.
I think you've covered it all. I mean, the Atrium project, I think, is a great project because it also allows artists to create these immersive installations and to really keep on reimagining the space and how our audiences will engage with that particular space over time. And so I think, Karel said everything, and you've also. But I think also just, with Athi's exhibition, I think, the way light will work in that room, particularly with stained glass, will be very interesting. And the kinds of sort of, he's working with amazing iconographies, like vernacular iconography, and he's working with the traditional form, and using his own vernacular to have a very critical conversation about cosmology and our return to cosmology, particularly Southern African cosmology. So I think it's going to be a very interesting and experiential, it's just like our senses will be enticed in a different way by Athi's work. Those who are familiar with Athi's work, of course, are aware of his sculptural works, his works on, his very textile works, and these ones are more a very sort of, not a shift, but a more, an expansion of his stained glass practice.
That's very exciting. I can't wait to see it.
Sorry, something that I just want to add is I think something that I've always missed in South Africa was that I always felt that a lot of the sculptural practice was very domestic scale. With the new museums and the bigger scale spaces, the artists do respond on that. And I think that's what, a platform like the Norval or the MoCA, who's got these incredible spaces, will immediately the artist just responds on the spaces, so it brings another value to the whole ecosystem.
I suppose, Elana, this is a good time just for questioning. We've had a lot of comments, and everybody thanking everybody for joining us, and thank you for the presentation. A question is from Kate Crane-Briggs, is just asking, how involved are as we said, the Homestead collection forms the core of the core collection alongside the Prela and Scottness collections that you've got. How involved are the Norvals in the programming? Yes, and that's signed from thanks, Kate Crane-Briggs.
Owen, I think you can answer this.
We're really lucky, Matthew, and Kate and everyone that's sort of watching. The Norval family, sometimes more than they're very generous, and they allow us to run with projects that we really believe in, and projects even that they think perhaps we're a little crazy, a little mad, and they have an enormous amount of trust in us, and it is fantastic, I have to say. And they really, that trust, I think, is what makes this process possible. I don't know.
Absolutely. As we've started to see, I think in museum moments, one of highlighting factors has been this emergence of these world-class institutions that have started flying the flag of cultural production, not only in South Africa or Southern Africa, but really forefronting the agenda of recontextualizing and relocating the African continent in the dialogue, I suppose, being the driving the dialogue rather than having the dialogue driven for us, which is really amazing. And I think, you know, we're starting to see these beacons that are shining. We said, you know, before there was a point in between, and Karel, I suppose historically you'll be able to speak to this. There was a point that the banks stepped in. So we had Absa Bank and Standard Bank having these awards and prizes, and I think we're in an evolution in the South African journey of having these incredible families and incredible collections and collectors behind them and patrons, starting to stimulate the conversation. And I think that's what we've really seen today. And you know, what gives such richness and texture to these museum moments talks. So thank you everybody for joining us. And you've been listening to a Strauss & Company hosting the Norval Foundation, speaking about its generation. And I don't think this is going to be the last time that we're hearing from you. As our projects roll out, this has been such a wonderful opportunity to reach out and start new conversations and carry on conversations that need to be made and brought to the public. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining Strauss & Company this afternoon. You've been listening to Museum Moments, and please join us again next week at 4 o'clock, and we'll be I think speaking to, I think Bina might be here. Bina, just correct me, who have we got on next week?
Matthew, it's the Tatham Art Gallery next week.
That's my hometown. So next week we'll be joined. I knew they were coming up, but I wasn't sure if we were popping north or south. So we're going to be joined by the Tatham Art Gallery next week in Pietermaritzburg, with something I'm really looking forward to. A collection that really began my interest in public museums, and that's what we're all about at Museum Moments with Strauss & Company. So thank you very much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. I won't keep any of you more of your time. Be safe, and we'll see you next week, same time, same place. Thank you very much. Good evening.
Thank you, Lana. Thanks, Karel, Owen, Khanyisile, and Matthew. It was fantastic. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much to our audience for joining us. Have a good evening. Be safe. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Matt.